Okay, and with that, I will call to order this regular meeting of the Town of Ledyard Planning and Zoning Commission. It is Thursday, July 8th, 2021 at 7 p.m. This is a remote meeting over Zoom. Let me do the roll call. Mr. Cherry.
Here.
Mr. Boudreau.
Present.
Mr. Wood.
Here.
Ms. Scanlon.
Here.
Mr. Capon.
Here.
Mr. Weitzcarver. Okay, and I did get a note from Ms. Evans. She is excused as well. Also on the call are the zoning enforcement officer, Kyle Felice, and our new director of planning, Juliet Hodge. Welcome aboard, Juliet.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
Here. Thanks.
Hi, Julia.
Hello.
So we have all regular members are present, so I'll be appointing no alternates this evening. Do we have any citizens petitions on non-agenda items? Hearing none, I'll move on to changes to the agenda. So no changes, but a couple of notes. So I'll apologize. While we hit the statutory limits for the agenda, that was about all we hit. So I apologize for the late agenda to everyone. The town hall was closed Monday and Tuesday, so we were scrambling to get this out on Wednesday. So a note on the agenda, item B under old business, discussion of House Bill 6107. That's not old business. So that will be carried on as old business, but we'll discuss that under new business, where we have new legislation regarding housing. The other note I wanted to make is about remote meetings. So I did speak with the mayor this afternoon, and so the town has submitted a grant to get a couple of cameras and a speaker for the town hall annex, which will allow us to hold hybrid meetings, meaning we'll be able to allow remote participation. And so that is expected to come through in August. And purchase right away. So, hopefully sometime in the September timeframe. My intention is to continue holding remote meetings until we have the technology in place to allow remote participation. As far as I'm concerned, we've had more participation from the public, phenomenal attendance from members, and we've had easy access to staff with these remote meetings. So my intention is to continue that. For those following, the implementer bill for 6107 did include some guidelines for holding remote meetings. The only thing to be aware of is that any member of the public who wishes to attend the meeting and feels that they can't technologically wise can provide written notice at least 24 hours before the meeting. And we will figure out a way for that person to attend the meeting. So, if there is someone who wants to attend and is having trouble remotely, we are obligated by that to do that. And we will certainly figure out how to do that. Other than that, pretty much all of the rules that we have been following stay the same. The agenda needs to be posted ahead of time. It needs to be on the town website. We need to make sure that when people speak, you identify yourself as much as possible so that people understand who's talking and things like that. Any questions on that? Mike, your lips are moving, but you're muted.
Do we have anybody that's attending tonight that attended any of the town meetings that were hybrid, like on the budget? Is there any feedback on how well that worked for members of the public? I know it worked well for Eric and I, but we were there at the meeting, so I guess not. Okay, well, I think that would be good to know. Somebody that actually attended a hybrid meeting. Did they get anything out of it?
Yep. Yeah, I think that's fair. And you know, the word is that the bits of technology that we're purchasing are pretty nice. There's some people in the area have used them. They're 180-degree cameras, so they do a good job of capturing everyone. They have a smart focus so that they know who's talking, and so they focus on that person. They've got good microphones, and so it sounds like it'll work really well. And I support it, even just from the simple fact of 10 people driving half an hour for an hour meeting. If we can cut out 6 hours of driving, that to me feels like a win too. So we're going to keep doing this. If anyone does have concerns or problems with that, definitely reach out to myself or staff, and we'll make sure everyone's there. The intention is certainly not to exclude anyone. It's the exact opposite. We've had more participation this way than we've ever had before. And so I want to keep that going. Okay, with that, we'll move to our first public hearing / application. So we're just accepting this. So this is application PZ 21-08 MAP 1528 Route 12 Gales Ferry.
Citizens petitions?
We've already, Ms. Parkinson, is that you speaking?
Yes. Did you skip citizens petitions?
No, we didn't. I asked for public input earlier, but if you have something to say, I'm willing to allow it if you're brief.
Okay, because I couldn't follow your agenda too well where you were going on this. It seems like you skipped that.
I didn't skip it, but it's okay. You can speak.
Thank you. I'm Karen Parkinson, 55 Rose Hill Road, owner of Rose Hill Farm and the Paddock Tack Shop. I wish to welcome Juliet Hodge to our community. Tonight, I am speaking to urge you to give your full support to Paul Moggle's presentation later this evening on creating an agricultural historic districts in Ledyard. My fellow farmers could not be here tonight to present. They are either at competitions, fairs, or they're busy preparing for this incoming storm. I do not know if any of you are farmers or have friends that are farmers, or if you have any farm history. But you need to know that there is a national movement to preserve farming and our farms. Ledyard can do its part by creating this agricultural historic district. Please help us survive. I do not know the next step in this process, but I volunteer my time and knowledge to the process. Ledyard as a community is active in promoting open space. Can we be just as proactive in preserving and protecting our agriculture heritage? Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Parkinson. So just to be clear, there will be no presentation from Mr. Mogul this evening. It's not on the agenda. We'll definitely get it on our agenda in the future. I did include the document that Mr. Mogul sent along under correspondence so everyone can see it. And we'll definitely find a time to go through that with him in the future. We just didn't get it on this month's agenda. So moving on, we were on public hearings and applications, item A. So we are accepting application PZ 21-08 MAP 1528 Route 12 Gales Ferry zone map change to extend the Gales Ferry Design District zone 200 feet to include the subject property. As a zone change, we will need a public hearing for that. So I will schedule the public hearing for that zone change on 8/12. And we will have a presentation from the applicant's attorney at that date. Next on our agenda under old business is application PZ 21-07 site 7 Fairway Drive, Ledyard. Applicant property owner Jacob Geer for site plan approval for commercial development, auto repair facility, proposed building and parking area. And we received an extension request, today. It's the last item under last exhibit, no, it's not exhibit, last attachment under this item. And so we did receive a request for an extension until August 12th. This application was incomplete, and combined with the fact that I think this is Juliet's second day, they extended this to have time to get the proper staff review and to get this application complete. and we will see them in August. The next item, we'll skip to new business, and the next item is new legislation regarding housing. So this is in regards to the recent Senate Bill 6107, which makes significant changes to the Zoning Enabling Act and affects a bunch of things, including accessory apartments, affordable housing plans, minimum square footage, parking, all of these things. And so what I intend on doing is we'll carry this as an agenda item for the next couple of months. We will need to make regulation changes in order to comply with this. And really all I wanted to do on this agenda item is give a chance for the committee to discuss what they know about this, to ask questions about it. And if of particular relevance is the regional COG meeting on July 26th is dedicated solely to understanding what effects this has on local regulations. Katie Scanlon is our rep for that, and I wanted people to have the chance, if we've got questions that we want to ask of Juliet or that we want to inquiry to the regional COG, let's get those out, and just sort of delineated that these are some of the questions that we've got. These are the things that we're not sure how are actually going to play out. So this is really just an open discussion for the commission. Any concerns or questions they have here.
I could start.
Sure.
Mike Cherry. What I used for guidance was OLR put out a bill analysis that covers both the bill and the amendment. So I went through that, and there's a couple of questions that you could read it a couple of different ways. So I don't expect anybody to have the answers, but under the as of right accessory apartments, the way it's worded, it says an accessory dwelling unit is allowed anywhere there's a single family home. So my question is, did they mean it's allowed in any residential district where a lot's zoned for single family? Or did it mean if you have a single family home, even in a commercial district, which is legally non-conforming, can you also put an accessory dwelling unit on the property? I don't know, and I've seen discussions both ways. So that's the first question. How is that handled? And that's probably the lawyers are going to fight that out. Required goals and considerations. I think it's interesting that the old regs talked about character. The old statute talked about character. The new statute eliminates that concern, and it has us coming up with some deliberate things that may be on the ground or what have you, but that's worth noting. I didn't really have a question. Under the prohibited provision sections, what it does is it does away with minimum square footage and relies on building code and health code for square footage. So I know that our regs, we had some spots with minimum square footage. We'll have to work on that.
Yeah.
Mobile home and mobile manufactured homes. I think it's interesting because it says you cannot put any regulations on a mobile manufactured home park that you don't have on single family homes. So, what does that really mean? Does it mean what it says? We don't currently have any zoning for mobile manufactured home parks, but with that wording, could you establish a cluster? That's a new definition in this statute of 4 mobile manufactured homes. And would that be allowed under the current regs? I don't know. Once again, another question. It talked about in minimum square footage, the wording was absolutely terrible. The under the bill, the auxiliary dwelling unit zoning regulations must set a maximum net floor area that is the lesser of 30% of the principal or 1,000, whichever is less, but may be larger. So I tried to parse that and I said, okay, so the minimum maximum must be at least 30%. And I dove down that rabbit hole and got so confused because the construction was just poor in the bill. I think they're saying we can't tell somebody they can't have at least 30%, but we can tell them they can have more. I think that's what it says, but that's another question. Other than that, there are many things in here, and I'd be willing to, on a section by section, or periodically as I feel up to it, mark up our current regs and provide them to the chair and the director of land use for consideration. I know sooner or later, I was kind of hoping COG will give us a set of sections that would cover it, but once again, COG relies on the Regional Planning Commission members to do that work. So maybe I'll send it on to Katie also, so she can parse it and see if it's worthwhile. But interesting words. Mobile manufactured home developments cannot be treated substantially different from multifamily dwellings. Interesting. And then luckily we all go to training, so it has no effect on us because we're well trained. The other thing that's not in this bill and is kind of part of it, they had another bill that changed all the expiration dates, Juliet, and I tried to figure out what that was saying. And
That one's confusing.
it was wonderfully confusing. So other than that, a lot of these things we've been talking about for a decade. So it's nice to see them in the statute. Now we got to figure out how to put them in use. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Tom Boudreau.
Please.
In our regs, we don't allow people to live in your camper on your property. Now, is a camper going to be considered extra housing?
No.
No.
And if I put it up on blocks, so it's all supported and off its wheels, does that change the rules?
They're considered recreational vehicles, which differ from mobile manufactured homes.
I think it still says mobile manufactured homes manufactured to a HUD standard. It's
Okay, all right.
I think, the one that I was thinking about, my sister and brother-in-law bought a park home that has a bedroom, a kitchen, a bathroom, a living room, and moved it to the North Woods in Wisconsin on a lake. It's probably 600 or 700 square feet. And then you start sitting there going, okay, would a park home meet those things? I guess if it's founded, like you said, possibly, Tom, but the way the statute's written in my reading, it's talking about double wides again. And the park home is not a double wide, it's 12 feet wide. So
So one thing that, when Tom was talking, the thing that I immediately thought about was the tiny houses on 26-foot trailers, and whether they would be now considered a legal ADU.
My reading of the statute says it would have to meet building code minimums for square footage. And I don't think those do. It tells us we can't establish a smaller one. It says we can establish a maximum, but the minimum maximum is 30%. But for the actual minimum.
Because the building code minimum is 300 and something. Is that Is that correct? Does anybody know that?
See, but I don't know how what it counts, if it counts bedrooms and living and total.
This also has to meet narrowest dimension 22 feet and built in accordance with federal manufactured home construction. So
Yeah,
the tiny houses or the RV won't meet that.
yeah.
Well, I mean, a tiny house could, I suppose, but
Well, I haven't seen any that would meet that 22-foot width, but
Right.
most of them are sized to go down the road without a wide vehicle permit. So,
Yeah, they tend to be 8
how
feet
wide?
at most.
yeah.
How much?
8 feet at most.
Yeah, the 20, 22, 24 are normally doubles that are assembled on site.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting.
Thoughts or questions from other commissioners?
I actually have one, Commissioner Wood. Thank you.
Please.
And I was trying to pull the slide up here, but it talks about thou shalt not place a cap on the number of multifamily housing units in town. And so that may be that may be obvious, but I think what it's not obvious to me what that means. And I can pull that slide up here, I think.
Yeah, because right now we certainly have density restrictions essentially
Right.
in our regulations that you're limited to X per acre or something like that, and so that will need to be visited to understand. If all those density requirements go out or what.
A lot of that was based on our consternation with open space subdivisions and the comments from the health district, where they were worried about nitrogen in septic systems if you had more than 6 bedrooms per acre.
Yep.
So that doesn't limit the number of units necessarily, because we're not saying how big the parcel is. But that's an interesting, yeah, if we say no more than 6 bedrooms per acre, I don't know. I think the biggest thing that comes into question is, can we say 5 acre minimum anymore and still meet fair housing? I don't know.
Yeah. And the other thing that is coming down the road, especially in that density calculations, is one of the things that the working group established by this is supposed to look at is alternative sewerage methods, and whether or not the sewerage calculations and who's allowed to approve them and that kind of thing, if those are up to date and if those are still reasonable or not. And so that I think will certainly play into that density calculation. What we based that density calculation on was the current guidance on what made sense there. And they say something different.
Yeah, a while back, we had Dave Fink from Partnership for Strong Communities. I think Tom was probably still on Planning Commission at the time, come and talk to us about how to do affordable housing in a community that's mostly septic systems and what could be done. So, I mean, there's still innovative ways to go do that. And hopefully the working group will come up with more. And similar to our discussions with auxiliary dwelling units being detached, our problem at the time when we sat there and looked at it, even with the medical units, the granny pods, as soon as you put 2 septic systems, 2 homes on one lot, you were community septic, and the cost and everything just got prohibitive. So we didn't even go there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
when
that's
they
right.
wrote this statute and did away with that, that opens that door up again to, we got to put our thinking.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Scanlon. I agree. I think that in a town like ours, we're going to be more limited by the health code than by the new statutes.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, a lot of it comes down to finances too. I mean, that's certainly what we saw with the granny pods, right? Is when you took a look at what it was going to cost, in order to put something like that in, it was prohibitively expensive. And so I think that's still a challenge.
Plus, when Granny passed, you had to do away with it. So you may have spent $100,000 to put this on your property, and then a year later you have to get rid of it and nobody wants it. It didn't work out well economically. You're correct.
Yeah.
There's some other stuff in this that's worth looking at. It defines a term called middle housing. Bill Soms had when we talked about apartments, Bill had mentioned that he didn't think anybody in Ledyard would want to see 6 or 7 story apartment building across the street from them. Well, I don't think we have any today. I think the biggest ones are 2-story, and we're looking at, 4 units per floor or 8 units total. And that would probably fall into that middle housing category that we didn't really look at too hard before. So more opportunity.
To clarify something you said earlier, you wouldn't be changing like the density requirements. What that statute is saying about multifamily dwelling is that you can't say we can't have any multifamily apartments more than 10 units. You can't cap the number of units in whatever you consider to be multifamily housing over 4 units.
Our regs today do that in a couple of spots where we say
Okay.
this is the maximum number of units, and we base that on septic. So you end up with 31 units, because if you did 32, you couldn't, if you had 32 bedrooms, you couldn't provide septic without going to deep.
Now you can, because they
Now
upped
you
that to
can.
10,000.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to go back and look at that. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to mention, because I know there was already some confusion on the internet about what as of right actually means. And so what as of right means is that when you want a permit for this, there will be no public hearing. And there's no commission review. You still have to go get your permit. You still need to go talk to the land use office to get your ducks in a row. But it means that essentially, you're not involved with this commission. So it is a more streamlined approach. But it doesn't mean that you can go build an accessory unit in your garage tomorrow without talking to anybody. So if you are interested in this and are listening, definitely talk to someone in the land use office to find out what you need to do. So
We still need to meet the regs.
yeah.
And sometimes site plan approval. It doesn't take you out entirely.
No, it takes away the special permit subjective type stuff. And they
Yep.
took a lot of that away even outside of this.
Yeah, it should be a list of things that you need to make sure that you meet. But yeah, it was just worth mentioning, because I think that's an easy. It's easy to not understand what as of right means.
No special permit.
Yeah.
Easy way.
Yeah, there will be no public hearing.
Right. That's the best way to describe it. Yeah.
Yeah. Other questions or comments from commissioners? Please, Mr. Wood.
Yeah, thank you very much, Commissioner Woody. I guess my other one is just a comment, and it's in that opt-out area where at 2/3 of a vote by the legislative body and 2/3 of the vote by the zoning commission is what it takes to opt out of any of these. So I was actually glad to see that in there myself. So
If I
Yeah,
could-
there is a provision for it's for the ADUs and for the parking restrictions. There's opt out. Are there other items that there's opt outs for?
let me pull that back up here a minute.
Those are the two I remember.
I
Yeah,
think
there's a third
I don't
one
remember.
somewhere.
Is there?
Yeah, the accessory dwelling units, that takes a 2/3 and a 2/3.
I think what's interesting is the way the statute was written. It starts with a 2/3 vote of the planning commission, and then it's confirmed after the planning commission decides to opt out by a 2/3 vote of the legislative body. So as I read it, the town council can't of and by their own hold a vote and decide to opt out. They need a recommendation from planning that they confirm. For what that's worth.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I'm reading that too, but I don't know whether that's right or not.
It is.
Is it? Yeah. I think the third opt-out is one that was there before, and that was on the medical
Granny pods.
granny pods. And that, to me, it's still a separate section, but it's almost overcome by events by accessory dwelling units.
Yeah.
So, I think the accessory dwelling unit gives somebody a lot more leeway than the medical unit.
Yeah, and so we opted out of the granny pods when it first came around. Is that something that we need to repeat, or is that stand given the new statute?
I would think it would still stand.
Okay.
Unless something changed about the criteria in that statute, I don't think you would have to repeat it.
Okay. The other thing to
I'll verify that. I'll verify that for you though.
Thank you. The other thing to note in here is that we need to update an affordable housing plan integrated into the POCD. And so just so everyone knows that that's in progress. There's a small grant that is submitted. What is it, 15,000, 20,000, something? I forget what the exact dollar amount is.
15,000. I haven't submitted it yet though.
Okay, and it's essentially for technical assistance. So if as a part of that, we want to get GIS mapping or we want to get surveys done or something like that, we do have a pot of money to be able to use for that kind of thing. And it at least the way it read, at least the way that the grant read, is as long as we get it submitted fairly promptly, it seems like pretty much a done deal that we'll get it. So we should have some money to assist in doing that, which will be one of Juliet's first things to tackle. Which fortunately she's already done it for North Stonington, so she's been through the
I
process.
did it. Yeah, it was very painless. It was really easy with the state on that one.
Yeah, good. Yep. Yeah, and so we will get that incorporated into our POCD so that all that is retained in one place. Other questions or comments from commissioners?
I have one concern, and I don't know how to phrase it as a question, but when they're talking about ADUs specifically, I think they talked about nonconformities and sprinkler systems and how that shouldn't have any effect. And I didn't understand that at all, Juliet.
Most towns have a provision that if you have a non-conforming, say you have a single family house in an industrial zone or something like that, that you can't deny that person the ability to have the typical accessory uses or additions or whatever that would normally be allowed if their house was in a residential zone. So you have to treat it, or like a home occupation, something like that. You have to treat it as if it were a house in a residential zone.
Okay.
I mean, that feels like it returns to the original question that was asked a while ago around a residential use that's in a commercial zone.
Mm-hmm. You have to treat it like a residence. So if they want to have a accessory apartment or they want to have a home occupation or whatever, they want to build a deck, put a pool in, they can do all that. That's protected by statute.
And I guess for those of us that try and figure out what the regs say, even though it probably won't be a special permit, it talks about ADUs and bulk requirements. And Chair and I were talking earlier in the week on, do we need a new bulk table? I don't think so. I think the rules we have work. But Julia, if you could look at what the statute says versus what our setbacks are now.
I think they just say you have to abide with whatever your bulk requirements are at the time. In other words, if you can't fit it in with your setbacks, you can't have one. It's not like you can have one no matter what. You still have to abide by the local dimensional requirements.
But
what about existing structures that are non-conforming?
Non-conforming to setback? Something like that?
Yeah.
They can't do it. No, they would still need a variance.
And I guess maybe it's just me, but I've always thought that once I get behind the rear build line of the home, I'm into rear yard setbacks, so it's 6 feet all the way around instead of the 13 and 16 or whatever we may have had side to side. Or do we hold those side setbacks all the way to the rear property line now?
I would assume so.
Okay, so we're gonna want to put it within the boundaries of the side setbacks, within that building envelope, if you will. Okay,
Unless you've got a variance for whatever the nonconformity was and the variance worded, the new setback shot will be whatever.
yeah,
But-
it really does depend on the wording at that point. I've seen those.
I'd have to look at your regs carefully to make, in your non-conforming section, you might say something entirely different. But typically, you would have to abide by whatever the setbacks are for the zone.
Okay,
Other questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll move on, but I will again say that July 26th meeting of the regional COG is going to be focused on these things, on these items. So, if you do have questions or thoughts that, you'd like Katie to bring up, definitely send her an email with any questions that you've got. There'll be a group of people there to think it over. And those meetings are also open. So, feel free to attend if you're interested and see what other towns are doing or thinking. And Katie, take copious notes. We'll expect a report from you in August about what was discussed.
There's another event on July 12th about it too. I'll send a link, and then I sent you a link to the video of the event that already happened. So between all of them, maybe.
Yep. Yeah,
we can all
Deb,
get some notes.
Deb, can we get those items tacked on to this agenda item? And let's also get the OLR report tacked on, and we'll just start sort of collecting those references for people.
Okay.
Thank you.
Katie, if more than one member of the public shows up to the Regional Planning Commission meeting, Justin will be speechless, because all
would.
the years being on that committee, we never had anybody from the public.
We rarely have a quorum between the towns that are supposed to attend. So yeah, if the public attends, that'd be fantastic.
I think Julia can confirm that too from her time.
I know. I used to attend as staff because we couldn't get anybody to go. Yep.
Oh, and before we move on, the one thing I will add on is one of the thing that is discussed in this act and also by the working group is the concept of form-based codes. And so if you've heard that term and you don't know what it is, look it up. There's lots of good resources on the web to kind of describe what it is and how it can be implemented. I think I struggle in a lot of ways in how we would apply it in Ledyard. We probably have limited areas where it makes sense, but there are some areas where it may make sense. And I certainly ask all commissioners, if you don't know what that is, go figure out what it is. It's not complicated, but you should know what it is. So I apologize, since I made one last comment. If anyone else has a one last comment or question on the housing, I'll allow it as well.
Just connotations type question. If we can in the future, can we not use documents prepared by Sarah Bonin because it gives a bad connotation? Some people are going to see desegregate Connecticut and say, we don't need this, and be against it from the get-go. And that's just unfortunate that's their group, but they did a heck of a lot of work to put this together and get it through. And I'd hate to see sour taste because somebody doesn't understand what it does. They just saw the title.
Yeah.
All right, next up on our agenda is the new legislation for marijuana growers and sellers. This was SB 1201, adult use recreational marijuana. This allows for there to be one seller and one cultivator permitted in town for the next, 3 years before the
Yes, 2024, August, I think. Up there.
Yeah. And so it's essentially limited for the first couple of years. You know, and so what that bill does do is it does allow municipalities to amend zoning regs or ordinances to do everything from prohibit them from opening to limit their hours and restrict their proximity. And so, you know, I thought it was worthwhile for the commission to have a discussion about, you know, sort of where we are on these uses. One thing that I know we haven't done is we really haven't done any outreach to the public to try to kind of understand where citizens are on this. And so I wanted to pose the question of whether or not, you know, the commission thought we should do anything here. One of the things that I think is worth noting is that the zoning commission essentially gets one swipe at putting new regulations in place. So if we put a regulation in place, it is 5 years before we can make another change. And so this is definitely intended to, if you want to do something, do it once and leave it alone. And so, you know, it is something that I think that the commission should consider. Any thoughts from the commission on this?
Well, okay. Mike Cherry, we talked about this in some detail prematurely when we did the last major change to the regs, that we said, well, what are we going to do if they approve marijuana? And, you know, we kind of kicked it around the table and said, well, if we ever approve it, why wouldn't we treat it just like we do pharmacies and liquor stores? Have it be an allowed use and let the state regulate the hell out of it. That trying to go in and say you can't be within 6 feet of a church or 12 feet of a school and all that gets really difficult for a zoning commission to handle. I know that the town council is looking at putting together some draft ordinances on prohibiting use of marijuana on town-owned property. And that's very similar to state rules where, you know, there's no smoking in most public places. But that's not us. The only thing we have is the use, retail sales of marijuana. Is that a use that we want to have? And where do we want to have it? And I would think that we'd lump it in with alcoholic beverage sales in our commercial zones and call it a retail use. Now, growing, boy, Paul, I don't know if that'd be an agricultural use or not. Is that something you could plant between your rows of vines? And I think
it's easier to synthesize it than it is to grow it. Okay, THC is much easier and cheaper to synthesize.
Well, the other part of it is if Nate and I decide that we want to put the back 40 into growing marijuana and selling it, the license cost, as I read it the first time through, was $1 million, unless you're one of the disadvantaged groups that they target to this is going to help you, and then it's only 500,000. And once a year, the town, if the 10% of the town gets together, we can put it every year, we can put it on a referendum with the budget to say, you can't do that in our town. And then, you know, there was some stuff on the listserv. I don't know, Juliet, I don't know if you got any further on it, but they mean you can have one. Do you need 25,000 to get your first one, or can you have one up to 25,000?
Yes, that was decided.
So you can't have one, but you can't have two until you hit 50?
That's what they're arguing about. They're arguing about what happens between 25,000 and 50. Does that give you the second? And
Okay.
that's what hasn't been hashed out, but they did agree that For
Everybody can have,
for populations under 25,000, you can have one.
well, otherwise, the only place in southeastern Connecticut that could have had one would have been Groton.
And
Norwich.
Norwich have 25,000?
Yeah.
Stonington does, don't they? Don't they have to?
But they were still around 17.
No, I looked this up last night actually because I had seen that same thing and started doing the around who hits it, and there are not many in southeastern Connecticut. So I was glad to hear the confirmation that under 25,000 does get one. So
Well, with those license fees, it may not be economically feasible if you're not in a metropolitan area, a larger metropolitan area. And what there was some consideration at the time for reservation land. And I don't know where that ended up, but that may be something, we kind of want to look over our shoulder. If it can be on reservation land and in Ledyard, that's two in a pretty small area. So I don't know.
yeah, and so when I looked at this, I mean, I'm happy to give my opinion. Is the only thing that this commission probably would consider is whether or not we would want to consider restricting the hours of the operations. And I say that only because I know that's the thing that probably is going to upset people the most, is potentially the hours of operations of these things. Because I mean, I agree with Mr. Cherry, and we've discussed this as a commission previously, and this is a retail use, and I don't see any reason why we wouldn't allow it in our commercial zones. But I do think we probably ought to figure out how to do some outreach and understand where the town is on this.
Well, tongue in cheek, you have to think of the advantage to Girl Scouts selling cookies instead of trying to set up outside Village Market. It's set up outside the marijuana retailer, and think of the cookies they could sell.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've told this story before when my sister lives in Oregon, and we were going out to Bend with them, and we went through Hood River, and she said, there's the best bagel shop here in Hood River. And so we went to the bagel shop, and so we were all sitting at the picnic table outside the bagel shop having our bagel, and we looked over, and this very nice store next to it was a dispensary. And so, it's this very nice little store right next to the bagel shop, and it was sort of this is fine, folks. This works okay. So,
well, it's funny. There will be people against it. There always are. I don't care what it is. If it's the best thing since sliced bread, there'll be somebody against it. But Montville has had a medical dispensary for most of the last decade, I believe. And most people didn't even know where it was because it was such a great impact, and they ended up moving. And they're where the bank used to be by Beat Brothers, I believe. But once again, that was medical, but no real impact to the general public of Montville.
Well, I don't think there's probably any question that at some point there is going to be a dispensary on Route 12 somewhere in Ledyard or Groton, and I think we should be willing to have that be in Ledyard. It's perfectly reasonable for something like that to be operating on Route 12. So,
also. This is Marty Wood. Also, I remember reading in here that if we can't differentiate or discriminate or enter into the business that if a shop was going to open up, the product that they're selling should not enter into our decision whether to grant them a place to operate from. Which kind of goes back to what I think Mr. Cherry was talking about we let a shop open up a dispensary and then let the state laws and regulations take care of that. We shouldn't be able, we're not supposed to enter into our decision-making process what the product is that they're selling. as I read that in the 1201.
But I didn't see, like we saw with 6701 with the Zoning Enabling Act, we saw a public act, right? 1229. I didn't see a public act on Senate Bill 1201. So I imagine there's a whole bunch of rules and regulations that are still going to come down the pike at some point.
I thought I did have one. Oh. I thought there was one, but I don't have that in front of me right now.
I don't have it either, and I keep referring to it as 1201. So
Yeah, that's what I've been looking at. Yeah, if there is a public act, Juliet, would you mind appending that? Send that to Deb, and we'll get it added on to that agenda item, just so that we keep track of it.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts here? Hearing none, I'll move on to the approval of minutes. I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of June 10th, 2021.
Second.
The motion by Mr. Wood, seconded by Mr. Boudreau. Any corrections? Hearing none, I'll call a vote on the motion to approve the minutes of June 10. Mr. Cherry,
yes.
Mr. Boudreau,
Aye.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
Ms. Scanlon,
I'll abstain. I wasn't there.
no problem. And the chair votes yes, so that's 4-0 with one abstention. The next item, we have two items under correspondence. The first one is a notice from Robinson Cole of a modification of an existing cell tower. The astute watcher will notice that this is my address. It is the wrong address of this cell tower, despite them being informed this 5 or 10 times. So I don't own the cell tower, but this is just a modification of an existing tower. They're obligated to notify the town of the change. The only thing of note is that the upgrading of the antennas includes 5G capable antennas. So we are starting to see those pop up in town.
So I was thinking maybe you could go back and tell them they owe you royalties for the to allow the tower on the property.
I could ask them if I could finally make a cell phone call from my house, but after the last upgrade, I still can't. So I don't know.
It's funny because we're close enough that on a good day, you could probably hit a golf ball from house to house, but we can't talk on a cell phone from house to house.
No, yeah. Next item on correspondence is something that Ms. Parkinson referred to. This is a draft text amendment for Agricultural Heritage District from Mr. Mogul. This is modeled after the floating zone that is in Stonington. I encourage you all to read this and take a look and understand what it is. You know, my intention is to address the output from the Agricultural Ad Hoc Committee first, and so we'll process those as we get to it. Next, there is an email from Mr. Treaster regarding comments on 7 Fairway Drive. Next up under reports, you know, the town planner report. Obviously, Juliet has been on the job for 24 or 48 hours. So I think more than anything, just welcome aboard, Juliet. We're really glad to have you. We're excited to have you. So it's we'll try not to torture you too much in the first couple of weeks of the.
Excellent. A week reprieve, that's it?
I said a couple of weeks. I said a couple of weeks.
Fair game.
Next up, Kyle, you have a ZEO report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Don't have a whole lot, the usual permits. Been doing a lot of bond inspections, projects that were done in the spring. People want their money back, their yards are done and everything. That's taking some time. I did get, it was 5 or 6 permits for Stonegate, some new structures up there this morning. So got to make sure I view those thoroughly. Let's see here. Obviously, Liz has been working remote the last month, so I've been dealing with more of that kind of stuff she was with, just working more with developers and that kind of thing. This afternoon, we received a wetlands application for 34 Village for a subdivision that was previously withdrawn. So we should be seeing that coming up. I believe they made some changes. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet. It just came in today, but we'll see what that looks like. Most of you probably noticed the old Lou's garage across from Town Hall. They've been digging there. They're doing some soil remediation finally. So hopefully we can get a good, developer in there or tenant, either way, get someone in that space. Aside from that, though, it's really been it. I'm doing a couple of short-term rental renewals. It's that time of year that we got the first applications last year. Still only have like 5 or 6 on the books, but not really any complaints so far. So it's been working out, I guess. That ordinance is good till next March, I believe, and then we'll see what happens, I guess, with the council on that. But
Yeah, that was going to be my question, was when does that sunset?
yeah, I want to say it was March 24th next year, I want to say. So another year or so. But,
yeah. Okay. So at the town council meeting a few weeks ago, the mayor said there had actually been a short-term rental complaint filed.
I did get one, but the applicant or the owner applied for the permit, and they worked to resolve.
Gotcha. So it was an unpermitted STR, and so they just are going through the permit process.
Right. And that particular neighbor liked to complain. So he was vocal about it, which is fine. He was in close proximity to it. So that's maybe why it made it up to the council. But yeah, they came in and got a permit.
Okay.
Yeah, not too many complaints. Typical, occasionally a noise thing, but again, really not. I'm not receiving those. So.
Okay, good. Yeah, I like to see all of the approved in your report. So obviously you've been turning things over. So there's fewer submitted than there have been the last couple of months. So
yeah.
Any questions for Kyle?
Kyle, could we make sure Groton Utilities Water Division is aware of remediation at Lou's when they had the leaky tank and the contaminated soil? Somehow, even though we were informed at Ledyard, nobody called Groton Utilities or SQA to tell them that there were problems both in the watershed and in an adjacent to their well field for SQA.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I can double check on that. I know they work with DEP, obviously, but
yeah,
we can make sure they're all notified.
DEP had asked him if he's notified everybody he was supposed to. Sometimes they forget.
Yeah, we can double check on that.
Okay, thank you. Under other reports, so the ad hoc committee did wrap up its work on drafting new regulations for agriculture. And so that has been forwarded to the town council, and that committee will be before the council in, it is the second meeting in August. I think it might be the 25th, perhaps.
Yeah.
So I think I have that right date, but either way, it'll be their second meeting in Wednesday. That committee will be in front of the town council, and so presumably sometime not long after that, we'll get that forward from the town council, and then start processing that. So the thing I'd like to do, assuming that the town council forwards it directly on to us, the first thing that we'll probably do is get a Carl to read it, and this is all new to Juliet, so she'll want to go through it too. So
I think I wrote it.
You did.
You may see some similarities. So I'm guessing based on that timing, we probably won't see it until October, but we'll move forward with that. The first thing that we'd like to do is go ahead and hold a public workshop on it, just because I have no doubt that staff and the attorney will probably make some changes, clean up some of our mistakes before we actually have a passable reg. And I do want to thank Commission Member Tom Boudreau, who's the other PZC member on that committee, who slogged through that as well. So thanks a lot, Tom, for doing that. Any other reports? Anything from WPCA?
Tony Capon, a couple of things from WPCA to follow up on what Mike Cherry asked because it was before the meeting began. We expect in our meeting the fourth Tuesday of the month to get an update from the engineering firm on the plan to run the line out to the high school. So it's not a done deal in the sense that something may come up that hasn't been anticipated, but everything's on track. The other thing is that we're going to revisit running water out 117 North to the town garage. We had looked at that several years ago, but the cost estimate was someplace in the vicinity of $500,000, and WPCA doesn't have $500,000. So we kind of tabled that one, but we're going to look at it again because it's a possibility that could be done using Recovery Act funds. So that's in the very preliminary stages.
Tony, when we backed off of that, it was during the subdivision discussions for the townhomes.
Right.
And we brought it up to there and up their driveway. We wanted to go to the other end of that lot. But that is all ledge between where we ended the pipe and where we needed to go to get to the other end of the lot. So, but there's another user out there. The Congregational Church's senior housing was thinking about using water. So, there may be more than one customer.
Right, that's what we were talking about. One of the things we were talking about is the possibility of senior housing out, just down the street from me. So in addition to the fact that the town garage is all is on well, there have been some issues with whether there's seepage into the wells of the neighboring residences. So it's something we'd like to do. We just didn't have the money.
Yeah. Well, the hard part is that there's not a lot of property that doesn't belong to the state or the town.
Yep.
That, or as a cemetery or something like that you can assess because you ran a water main in front of
Yeah,
it. So
exactly.
Makes it expensive.
Anything else, Tony?
No, sir, that's it.
Great, thank you. Any other reports? Ms. Evans isn't here, so nothing from Conservation Commission. Regional planning is in a couple of weeks, so nothing from Katie, I assume.
Nope.
Great. With that, without objection, I will adjourn the meeting at 8:03 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Deb, you can stop the recording.
Good night, everybody.
very
Stay
much.
safe.
Good night, everyone.